hatred. Let me so love where there is darkness. Let me so light, for in the giving we shall receive, and in the dying we're given life. Lord, make me an instrument of peace, an instrument of peace. Lord, make me an instrument of peace, an instrument of peace. Where there is sorrow, let me sow hope. Where there is doubt, let me sow faith. Where there is injury, your pardon give, your consolation to those in pain. Lord, make me an instrument of peace, an instrument of peace. Lord, make me an instrument of peace, an instrument of peace. Amen. Amen.
Well, good evening, everybody. It is great to be with you. My name is Pastor Jeremy. I am the Cottage Grove pastor for the Grove, and I hope that wherever you are at this evening or whenever you're watching this, that you are just having a fantastic time. You know, one of the things I've missed most during my pandemic year was visiting coffee shops. When I started in Cottage Grove, my main job was to meet new people and to expand my network of relationships. And one of the ways that I did that, of course, was through sitting down and having coffee with people. So as you can imagine, I visited a lot of coffee shops over the years. And in my judgment, the best way to judge a coffee shop or individual barista is their generosity in portions and ordering of ingredients. Now, there are some coffee shops, Caribou, that start with ice, fill it like 3/4 of the way full, and then they add the coffee. And it starts off ice cold, but you know, within minutes it's watered down and there's very little actual coffee to account for. But then the good ones, there are other coffee shops that dole out the good stuff first. They pour in the coffee or the mixed drink in generous portions. Then, and only then, do they add the ice. Now, occasionally, they might even give you a bigger cup because there wasn't enough room for the drink they made. That's when you know you have a winner. We are in the midst of this series we're calling Reckless Love, looking at Jesus' teachings on love, and some might consider them to be too difficult or too foolish, but we're convinced are absolutely important for those of us who claim to be his followers. And people have heard of the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is probably Jesus' most famous teaching, Jesus' long or important teaching in the Gospel of Matthew, which includes the Beatitudes, the Lord's Prayer, and several other instances of, "You have heard it said, but I say to you." Maybe that teaching is familiar to you. Well, in Luke 6, where we're looking at today, we get a second, somewhat shorter version of those teachings known as the Sermon on the Plain. Like its predecessor, it begins with noting, "Blessed are the poor, love your neighbors, or love your enemies, turn the other cheek." But then in verse 37, it it's turned to the idea of judging. Here's what Jesus says. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be poured into your lap. For the measure you use will be the measure you receive. Now, let me start by saying that Jesus is not saying what he is not saying. He is not saying that we should suspend all judgments between what is right and wrong. He's not advocating for extreme moral relativism that deems every person and every action as equally valid. Trust me, if you read the life and teachings of Jesus, there are more than enough examples of Jesus confronting people or actions or entire systems that do not conform to the way we ought to live in the world. Instead, what Jesus is saying is that we ought to be overly generous with how we extend love towards others. And the imagery he uses is that of measurement. Now, in first century Palestine, you might go to an open air market to buy certain types of food or spices. And of course, those things would have to be measured out. Like my coffee shop experience, this could be done a number of ways. A stingy vendor would be one that would take a scoop and meticulously measure the exact amount to make sure you didn't receive too much, even if it meant you gave less than you actually paid for. You're probably not going to go back to that vendor, right? On the other hand, there might be another vendor who takes a scoop and then rather than just leveling it off, presses down, shakes it down to make room for even more. Then they add even more on top to the point of it actually overflowing before handing it over to you. This was the type of vendor, the type of human being that you ought to try to be, Jesus says. One that is generous, one who gives more than even ought to be received, one who doesn't rush to who is worthy and who is unworthy. Now, in our tradition, this is what we call grace. The love of God that we cannot earn and we cannot make go away. And having received this amazing gift from God in Jesus, it is a grace that we are expected to extend to others. Having received a cup that's overflowing, why would you not overfill someone else's cup? Now, I'm not sure how you're hearing this message today. I'm not sure where you're hearing it, what is going on in your life, but I do know that our world makes judging and withholding a lot easier than extending generosity and grace. But that is not the way of living that Jesus would have for us. If you haven't felt that grace of God for yourself, I encourage you to continue to connect with us. We'll help you connect to the opportunities to experience that healing, wholeness, and beauty in your life and for yourself. If you find yourself quick to judge, I would encourage you to think of those times and places or even specific people who have given you that extra chance and extend that open hand to others. And no matter who you are, where you are, I'd encourage you to find those smallest of ways to overfill someone's cup today. God's grace for us is enormous. You might even say reckless. And our grace to others ought to be just as generous.
Come out of sadness from wherever you've been. Come broken-hearted, let rescue begin. Come find your mercy, oh sinner, come kneel. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame, and all who are broken, lift up your face. Oh, wanderer, come home, you're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are. There's hope for the hopeless and all those who've strayed. Come sit at the table, come taste the grace. There's rest for the weary, a rest that endures. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't cure. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't cure. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. Oh, wanderer, come home, you're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are, come as you are. Fall in his arms, come as you are. There's joy for the morning, oh sinner, be still. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. Lay down your burdens, lay down your shame, and all who are broken, lift up your face. Oh, wanderer, come home, you're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are, come as you are, come as you are.
Let us love, comes the invitation from the beloved community. A community following Jesus so long that defined their whole beings by it. Let us love, little children. They encouraged each other as if this love was something that was yet unknown and needed to be practiced, like a baby carefully watching the footsteps of others until she finally discovers her own feet can move in this way, wobbly and imperfect, but still walking still following in the way. Let us love little children, not in word or in speech, but as if our whole bodies are learning this new grace. Let us be bold in learning this new movement, for we will falter, and it won't be perfect, just as we are not perfect. Little children, it will feel new and awkward, and it should. It should feel strange to twist and turn our bodies into love's possibility, to learn how to love in the way of Christ, who is still trying to encourage us to love one another. Let this be what defines us now, in this moment. Not so that they will know that we are Christians, but so that we know who that God's love abides. God's love abides in me. God's love abides in you. I am in you, and you are in me. And this changes everything. That is our prayer right now. That we will come to believe enough that God's love abides in us and be so changed. O Christ, may it be so.
Once again, it was so great to have you join us this evening, or whenever you're watching this, quite honestly. As a church, we exist to grow goodness, and so we hope that your experience watching this and every interaction that you have with us is an experience of healing, wholeness, and beauty in your life. Now, as we go, I leave you with 3 things in 1 minute, the 3 most important things to know this week. Number 1, next week, 5 p.m., Sunday night, it is our very last alternative online worship service. We hope that you'll join us for that, because number 2 is our preview service, our very first in-person preview service in our newly renovated building here in Cottage Grove, happening on September 26th at 10 a.m., Sunday morning at 10 a.m. We hope that you'll join us for that, get a feel for what our worship experience is going to be like, what the building is going to be like, what the flavor of the Grove Cottage Grove is. We invite you to come, invite others. We hope to pack the place and get the best experience as possible as we continue to figure these kinks out as we lead towards launch by the end of the year. And then number 3, giving. God has blessed us with so much, and giving is an act of generosity, just like we just talked about. You can give online by going to thegrovecg.church/give, or you can give through Venmo as well. There's several different ways for you to be able to give. Now, as we go, may you experience the healing, wholeness, and beauty of God's grace in your life. May it transform the way you think about and relate to others, and may it cause you to overflow with grace